It was the #1 movie in the entire world, grossed over $1 billion at the box office worldwide, and it completely defied audience expectations when it came out. But now, nobody talks about Iron Man 3. In this video, I'm gonna dig it up out of the depths and thrust it once more back into the spotlight, because Tony Stark's third and final solo film deserves a lot more love than it gets. It's not a movie without cinematic merit like some highbrowed and thick-eyebrowed movie critics would have you believe. And if you're one of the many fans of Marvel that's been feeling a little let down these past few years by the types of movies they've been releasing, then this video could also remind you of the good old days and cheer you up a little too. I'll take you back to an era where every MCU movie was a banger and Stan Lee could wander onto a movie set for a cameo and say basically whatever he wanted.
Are you Tony's stank?
So sit back, relax, and let's start this analysis off with style by talking about some of your friendly neighborhood demons. At a glance, Iron Man 3 may seem like it's just another grand, explosive, fun-for-the-whole-family superhero movie. Tony Stark cracks some jokes, blows up a few bad guys, and you get your $20 worth for the night. And it 100% is that. Marvel movies have always been shameless popcorn flicks for the masses. But the thing is, that's not all that it is. At the movie's heart, right beneath the miniaturized reactor drilled into its chest cavity, Iron Man 3 is fundamentally a movie about inner demons. The ones we all have inside of us, the anxieties, the insecurities, the hang-ups over what could have been. What influences our actions, whether we want to admit it or not, and if we're not bold enough to face them, can ruin our lives. Iron Man 3's big thematic statement is that we have more agency over these inner demons than we may realize, because we're the ones who create them. It's actually one of the first lines in the movie. Tony Stark monologues it while some Iron Man suits explode in the background. As if Marvel's worried that the audience's attention is going to drift, so they overlay this profound idea about life with fire and flames to keep them entertained. Or are they? This is the first reason why Iron Man 3 deserves to be remembered more than it is. It actually does a good job exploring its central thematic statement without forgetting how to have fun while doing so. There's two big ways the movie does this, and be sure to stick around because I'm going to be keeping the most controversial one for a second. We'll first start with the obvious. Let me break it down for you. Iron Man 3 takes place about 6 months after the Avengers, Marvel's first ever big team-up movie featuring the likes of Captain America, Thor, Hawkeye, Black Widow, the Hulk, and Phil. And then there was Iron Man, the guy in the tin can who nearly sacrificed himself by sticking a nuclear warhead into a hole at the film's climax. It gives the aliens inside their mothership a nice fresh breath of the vacuum of outer space, and the day is saved. But not before Tony Stark gets a chance to glimpse the magnitude of the threat invading Earth. As well as the searing bright blast of the nuclear explosion he somehow doesn't go blind from, because Stark is also wearing plot armor, and he, the confident, charismatic playboy we all know, is absolutely shattered by this experience. Just like flying into outer space stripped him of the air to breathe, it also took away his deep-seated belief that he was the top dog, the smartest, richest, wittiest guy in the room with the most access to Hans DeFuco premium hairstyling gel, which is why in Iron Man 3 we find him restless, not sleeping for days on end, prone to severe anxiety attacks at the simplest mention of aliens, and utterly obsessed with building Iron Man suits in his basement to help him cope with what's haunting him. You know, a really mentally healthy place. The latest suit is his most insecure invention of all, the clingy Mark 42, a prototype armor he can call on at any time to assemble over him no matter where he is with just the flick of his wrist, which he does in his sleep after suffering a nightmare about his experience blowing up the aliens, giving him and his girlfriend a surprise third visitor in their bed, which isn't as much fun as it probably usually is. This is what the movie initially makes us think are Stark's demons, his PTSD over the alien attack on New York and the looming threat to Earth. But as things progress, it turns out not everything's as it seems. Stark's obsession with building protective suits of armor have made him distant with those closest to him. Pepper Potts, Happy Hogan, Rhodey. He's even bullying his own robots helping him sweep his workshop.
Dummy. Hi, dummy. How did you get that cap on your head? You earned it.
He prefers instead talking to his Iron Man suits, which he's so emotionally close to, he started giving them nicknames, even going so far as to project his own emotions onto them, speaking on their behalf as if they're alive.
He's in pain. He's been injured. Leave him alone.
Sorry.
Are you?
But later in the movie, when Stark's house gets converted into an underwater dwelling by some gum-chewing bad guys with missiles, he's forced to get by without all of his fancy technology. Without any functional Iron Man suits, his AI assistant Jarvis, or his workshop, Stark finds himself having to rely on two things: the support of the people around him and the Google search engine that is his brain. The first person to help him comes in the form of Harley, a young southern boy who envisions a day when mankind sets aside their bullets and bombs for a far more formidable form of ammunition: potatoes. Harley helps Stark get all the things he needs to revitalize the one broken suit he's got, like a nice bed for it to lay on. And later, when Stark's reunited with Rhodey and eventually Pepper Potts, they each in their own way help Stark defeat the main villain too. Rhodey uses his most underrated superpower, depth perception.
You can't hit a boat this distance.
And Pepper Potts, after getting doped with a little enhancement drug called Extremis, uses her newfound abilities to deliver the final killing blow to the main villain. Abilities that'd also make her a killer baseball and forward soccer player. That's not to say Stark isn't carrying his own weight though, as the only way he's able to infiltrate the villain's evil lair in the first place is by putting his noggin to work, using devastating weapons he's designed from the likes of Bloom Special Fertilizer, Fire Ant Control, and Christmas ornaments. At the end of it all, Stark orders the self-destruction of the more than 3 dozen Iron Man suits he's summoned for the final battle, throwing away tens of millions of dollars in tech, because he's come to a realization. Seeing the aliens wasn't the source of his demons, but his insecurity that he wouldn't be able to deal with a major threat should it come. All those suits he made were just the way it physically manifested. The more he created, the more protected he felt at the cost of those closest to him. So they were the real demons all along. All he had to do was convince himself that he could be Iron Man without them. It connects back to that first scene of Stark monologuing to the audience that demons are something we create, because it's coming from when he recognized what his actually were, which he then destroyed. You see, Tony Stark doesn't just have a heart, but he's also got a pretty profound character arc. But it's not the only way Iron Man 3 explores the idea of creating demons either. The other, far more infamous example is what nobody was expecting and almost everyone hated when the movie came out: the Mandarin twist. In the comics, the Mandarin is Iron Man's arch nemesis, leader of the terrorist organization known as the Ten Rings, the group that kidnapped Stark in the first movie, blasting him with a bomb that embedded shrapnel into his heart, inspiring him to build the arc reactor to keep it out, a device that not only saved his life, but would always save him money on buying Energizer batteries from Walmart too. In Iron Man 3, the Mandarin's first presented as a terrorist claiming responsibility for explosions all over the country, with the Raiders hijacking TV signals to do it. It's like the guy's trying to start his own streaming service or something. But when Stark tracks the signals down and finds his evil lair, which is revealed to be in the faraway hellhole of Miami, Florida, what he finds is this.
Bloody hell, bloody hell. My name's Trevor Slattery. Don't hurt the face, I'm an actor.
The Mandarin's a dope. And it's genius, because he's the creation of the real villain, Aldrich Killian. He hired the silly British actor to play a role to divert attention from what his company's really working on. A way to upgrade humans, giving them all sorts of abilities like enhanced super strength, regeneration, and ghost pepper breath, which also has the occasional side effect of making people the color of orange sherbet ice cream, then exploding. A minor little kink. The Mandarin is a demon because he's been created by Killian to help him find success with his project. It's how he parallels Tony Stark. In the same way Stark's suits push those closest away from him, making him feel protected from threats, Killian's invention, the Mandarin, pushes attention away from his illegal pursuits, protecting his own interests, which, just like Stark, are rooted in insecurities he has. Killian's terrified he isn't good enough, because in 1999, he pitched his company's idea to Stark in an elevator and the two set up a meeting on the rooftop that Stark never showed up for. It was an event so traumatic to Killian that he confesses to considering suicide once he realized Stark wasn't going to show. His inner demons physically manifest through the Mandarin and his Extremis soldiers, who, perhaps uncoincidentally, resemble fiery Oompa Loompas from hell. They're what Killian thinks he needs to get what he wants: power, control, and respect from others. Killian even injects himself with his own experimental technology, transforming him from an awkward nerd with a limp to a fiery super soldier, no doubt giving him a bit of an ego boost too. It makes him a metaphor for what Stark could become if he continues down the same path, a contrived, artificial, unrecognizable version of himself, something Stark already echoes at the film's start with these little implants he's shooting into his arm, which are what enable him to summon the Mark 42 whenever he wants over his body, a suit that he can even control remotely, using it to do revolutionary things like flirt with Pepper Potts when he's not even in the same room. The line between man and machine is already becoming blurred as he drifts away from those he cares about, becoming colder, less emotionally invested, getting along better with his virtual AI partner, Jarvis, who serves as his travel agent, banter buddy, even his own personal doctor throughout the movie. He knows Stark more intimately than anyone else. It's like a romance.
Jarvis? Don't leave me, buddy.
Everything in Iron Man 3 has a guiding hand behind it. Nothing is there just for fluff. Well, except this giant fluffy bunny Stark buys for Pepper Potts.
It's a big bunny, relax about it.
But what also makes me think this movie deserves more respect is that it doesn't give into one of my greatest pet peeves in movies, especially superhero movies. Iron Man 3 is selfish. It's ironic I'm mentioning this because it was the first Iron Man movie that introduced the idea of a post-credits tease for the next in the pipeline. Before that, it used to be when the credits rolled, you walked out. All those thousands of people who slaved night and day to create a piece of Hollywood art, who cares about them? Well, Marvel did, and in a way, it was a genius tactic to get all of the people who worked on the film the recognition they deserved. But the types of post-credit scenes Marvel went for introduced this idea that everything had to be a setup for what was to come, and no one was a greater figurehead during this era than Iron Man. Everyone's favorite charismatic, wisecracking billionaire carried to legendary status by Robert Downey Jr.'s captivating performance, second only to his other iconic role, what could arguably be one of the greatest performances in all of cinema, Kirk Lazarus in Tropic Thunder.
God damn it! We lost! We fucking super lost, man!
Hands down the biggest Oscar snub in history. You'd think that he, the most central actor in the entire franchise, the one who started it all and whose movies were raking in the most amount of money, would be the perfect platform to hype up the next big thing for the MCU's future. But the great thing about Iron Man 3 is that it hints at nothing, and it's a real big improvement from another movie in the MCU it could have all too easily followed in the footsteps of. I'll get to that in a minute. In Iron Man 3, once the credits roll, we're treated to a scene of Tony Stark venting to the Hulk in his human form, Dr. Bruce Banner, and it's revealed that this was where the source of Stark's monologue from the film was coming from all along. A therapy session between him and a guy who turns into an enormous green monster whenever he gets too pissed off, the literal embodiment of emotional instability. Iron Man 3 is a pretty independent movie. It's allowed to focus on itself, and the fact Stark is literally talking about himself to a small audience is almost like a tongue-in-cheek metaphor for it. This is a strong pivot from the movie that came before, Iron Man 2, a film that's so covered in fingerprints from the other franchises it was trying to launch, it's possible to not even see it as a proper Iron Man movie, more like Avengers 0.5, because it's trying to flesh out the idea of Tony Stark being considered to join the Avengers. You've got Nick Fury showing up and yelling at Stark over how annoying he's being with all his shenanigans over coffee and sprinkled donuts. You've also got Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow, being shoehorned in as a sexy new personal assistant for Stark after he bequeaths his company to Pepper Potts, because the metal inside the arc reactor drilled into his chest is poisoning him. So how do you fix that? Well, by introducing the Tesseract, an Infinity Stone that will not only play a major role in the upcoming Avengers movie, but also in the other Avengers movies for the next 9 years. And how do you level out the particle accelerator you're using to harness the elemental energy from that Infinity Stone? With Captain America's shield, of course, because he's got a movie coming out next year. While it was thrilling at the time to see these sorts of references for what was to come, because it hinted at a cinematic landscape by the likes of which had never been seen before, it still came at a storytelling cost. Every one of those little references distracted from who the movie was supposed to be about. Because Iron Man 2 was trying to do so much setup, it's more of a Frankensteinian mismatch of ideas than a pure story about the most tech-centric character in the MCU's arsenal at the time, and it's a trend that's only ballooned since then. WandaVision wasn't a show that couldn't just be its own thing. It had to spin off setups for Doctor Strange 2, Vision Quest, and Agatha All Along, each of them an independent project intricately tied to what happens in that show. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was another project that couldn't be self-contained. It had to set up the Falcon as the new Captain America so we could start headlining those movies, while also laying the groundwork for the Thunderbolts, a whole other separate movie franchise featuring the Winter Soldier and one of the show's antagonists, John Walker. Ant-Man 3, Quantumania, and Loki were both their own projects that were forced to make King the Conqueror central to their plots so he could be set up as the next next big thing the Avengers would have to get together to fight, until the studio fired the actor, so it was all low-key a waste of time. I could do this all day, but I think my point is clear. In a universe so hell-bent on being interconnected, where each movie has to spawn like 3 others out of it at a time, it's refreshing to remember one that was permitted to simply stand on its own. Now, it should be noted that Iron Man 3 isn't without wider connections to the MCU, but the references to other superheroes are minimal and indirect at best. Like, when Killian references Thor, the god of thunder with a magic hammer, he doesn't even use his name.
Ever since that big dude with a hammer fell out of the sky, subtlety's kind of had its day.
And while Iron Man 3 significantly hinges on the other Avengers movie, it focuses only on Stark's role in it, his self-sacrifice to save New York City, and the consequences he suffered after surprisingly living through it. And because Iron Man 3 makes use of flashbacks, you don't even need to have watched that movie to completely understand what's going on. So Tony Stark isn't lost. He's able to remain front and center, which sets me up for the last great point I want to make about Iron Man 3's strengths as a film: its willingness to unabashedly be itself. What makes up a movie's personality? I've got 3 key ideas to share, the last of which is my personal favorite because it's undoubtedly the most important. But first, let's talk about Iron Man 3's glorious soundtrack. You look at the greatest franchises of all time, and they've each got fantastic musical scores to accompany them. Jurassic Park, Star Wars, Back to the Future, they're all inseparable to their main themes. Play them, and you'll immediately summon every fan to the vicinity like moths to a flame. But the Marvel Cinematic Universe is unique in that it's literally the highest grossing movie franchise of all time, and yet it doesn't really have much iconic music that you can associate with it. The only thing that comes close to being memorable for most is the Avengers main theme composed by Alan Silvestri. But beyond that, most people probably have an easier time remembering the order of operations from algebra class. For me, the only other music that I can hear and associate with one of the MCU superheroes are the AC/DC songs from the first 2 Iron Man movies: Back in Black, Thunderstruck, Shoot to Thrill, but none of those really count because there's someone else's music. Soundtracks in the MCU are all too often about as bland as a Nilla wafer without any Nutella to dip it in. It's difficult to express why this is the case, but at least part of the reason for it, in my opinion, is because the music between characters doesn't sound wholly unique. Except for Iron Man 3. Composed and conducted by Brian Tyler, the Iron Man 3 theme isn't just special because it's heroic, triumphant, and uplifting, but because it's customized to the character. For instance, sections of it emulate the sound of an iron being hammered, which is inseparable from Stark because it's the sound his tool made in the cave he built his very first suit in. Another reason it stands out to me is because it's used all the time. The same tune isn't just heard in the great over-the-top action sequences, but also when Stark's at his lowest. Like when he crashes in Tennessee after his house gets destroyed, finding himself alone, beaten, and with nothing but a broken suit to work with. And what a Native American to steal a poncho from. It's also one of the only themes to carry over into another Avengers movie, in this case, Avengers Age of Ultron. It's just once for a few brief seconds, but that's surprisingly more than most other heroes. And that's another part of the reason why I think music is so forgettable in the MCU. Because Captain America, for example, gets a new theme song in every movie he's in, it's a lot harder for it to sink into the audience's consciousness. Compare that to, say, Indiana Jones' main theme, which roars at one point or another in every movie he's in. It's like a sin if it doesn't. But a movie's personality is more than just the order of its notes, it's also the personality of the character it's trying to focus on. And what Iron Man 3 does is bring Tony Stark's personality to the forefront by dedicating most of its runtime to featuring the most distinguishing aspect of it, a brain that makes Einstein look like Lloyd from Dumb and Dumber, which again he's forced to exercise after he's left with essentially nothing to work with following the terrorist attack on his home that destroyed everything: his lab, connection to Pepper, and perhaps most painfully of all, his Audis. May they rest in pieces. He's just got that kid named Harley, some junk in a garage, and a limited edition Dora the Explorer watch to work with, which he then uses to successfully repair his glitchy suit, track down the Mandarin, and figure out the truth behind him. Stark is, above all, resourceful. It's what distinguishes him from the likes of Captain America and Thor. His ability to turn a Christmas ornament into a fucking bomb. To emulate the movie a little and bring things full circle, I'd like to tie my analysis back to the theme at the heart of it all. Because you can't talk about a movie's personality without considering wondering what it's trying to say. We create our own demons is about constructing, manifesting, bringing something from nothing into existence. It's a statement that perfectly encapsulates a character like Stark, the hero who is who he is not because of some super soldier serum or a radioactive spider bite, but because he built the tools necessary to get himself there by himself. The armored suits, the fiery biotech engineered in a lab, the movie's plot devices are perfectly tailored to exploring a theme surrounding the act of creation. It's not something like, with great power comes great responsibility, which can literally be applied to like any other superhero movie. Iron Man 3 says something only it can say, and that's what not only great cinema, but being an artist in general is all about at the end of the day. Saying what you alone can from your own unique perspective inside this crazy little world we're all trying to live in together. And that's Iron Man 3 for you, featuring dazzling light shows, family drama, snow, and above all gift giving. It's without a doubt the best Christmas movie Marvel ever made.